One of the scariest overlooked coverages is tenant liability. You may see it listed as damage to property rented to you, tenant property liability, or even fire legal liability. It provides property coverage for direct physical loss or damage to property of others in the insured's care, custody, or control for which they're legally liable for. Does your client lease space in a building to run their business? If yes, you've probably encouraged them to purchase coverage for business, personal property, and general liability in the form of a BOP or a package. This policy will provide coverage for their stuff inside the rented or leased space. But what's often overlooked is the coverage for damage to property rented to you. It's a coverage that's thrown into a BOP and package and tends to be overlooked because the client really doesn't understand what it is. I want to encourage you not to overlook it or read past it. Let's say that one of your manufacturing clients leases a building, and one afternoon an employee is using the welding torch to repair a damaged metal part. Unbeknownst to the worker, a spark from the welding torch has flown into the nearby trash can. The trash can has begun to smolder, but no one in the shop notices the smoke. They close for the day. 2 hours later, the trash can ignites and the fire spreads on the floor and up a wall. And by the time it's extinguished, the building has suffered about $750,000 worth of damage. Of course, that landlord's going to look to your client to repair the building. The BOP policy that your client purchased contains an exclusion for damage to property that is leased by your client. But that coverage is afforded back later in the policy with a sublimit. But the sublimit is only about $300,000 on average. So in our example, your client's policy would pay out the $300,000, but they would need to pay the remaining part of it out of pocket. So what is the value of the entire building that you're insured is leasing space in? Many lease agreements include wording that will hold all the tenants responsible for the damage to the building regardless of fault. What do I mean? Well, let's say a restaurant 2 suites down from your client leaves the deep fryer on overnight, and it causes a fire and burns the entire building to the ground. Or what if an office tenant above yours has a water leak and floods all the building? Your client could be on the hook for those damages out of pocket because they're not legally responsible. Therefore, their policy would not be triggered to pay out. If your client is leasing space at all from anyone, you want to make sure they understand that in certain circumstances, they could be responsible for the damage to the building regardless of fault. And that needs to be addressed with them before a claim occurs. It's a good rule of thumb to transfer the risk by increasing the limit to damage to property rented to the highest available depending on the building value. Liberty Mutual has a liability extension endorsement which will broaden the coverage up to the limit of liability with a 0 deductible. Join me next month to see what commonly overlooked coverage I'm dishing out for your agency.